We will now call the meeting of the Waco City Council on April 5th, 2022 to order at 3:01 p.m. Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on any agenda item or during the hearing of visitors portion of the agenda. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you are here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the City Secretary staff at the registration table outside of the auditorium to provide registration information so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation, and staff will distribute those to council. If you are unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is able to be brought with you. Is there anyone present who would like to speak on a work session agenda item? If not, then we will now recess the regular session and convene a work session with a report from our city manager.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Welcome. I do not have any changes to the agenda today, so I'll move real quick into an overview of our informal report, which is IR 2022-120. On our water conservation and drought contingency plan. We've added this to the agenda both to facilitate a conversation with the council, but also for the public's benefit so they have a good understanding of the contingency plan heading into this year. One of the reasons behind that, of course, is that Lake Waco is running about 4 to 4.5 feet lower than we typically see it heading into the spring. And the lake, of course, serves as our city and the region's predominant water source. So we watch that lake level really closely. And while 4 feet doesn't seem like a lot to the eye, as you're looking at Lake Waco, it does equate to about 11 billion gallons of water that we enter this year short compared to last year. And typically, as people likely are aware, we like to enter the springtime full in the lake and see those springtime rains really keep us full through the summertime as Texas weather dries out and rainfall is scarce. And that allows us to then have spring or have fall rain that fills it back up again. Well, that doesn't look like that's going to be the case this year, as we showed in the informal report. And so we did document in the IR the next steps in the contingency plan, which we're close to having to take a stage 1 water restriction step. We're about 2 feet away from that. That would recognize what's called a mild water shortage and enact a series of items with the goal of reducing average daily water use by 1%. Certainly in future stages, past stage 1, the impact to Wacoans becomes, and the region becomes more significant with a lot of scrutiny around water usage, such as the timing of usage, days of the week, as well as in future stages 2 through 4, the potential for criminal penalties if you're found to be in violation or out of compliance with the restrictions. So hopefully we get a turn of the weather and we don't see ourselves move through each of those stages, but wanted the public to be aware and open the floor for any questions from the council.
Just really appreciate the distribution of this information and think it's important for us and our public to know about this. I think that it shows a proactive approach to this important issue and just appreciate the thoughtful planning that our staff and the thoughtful planning our staff has gone to regarding this issue. And as you know, my comment is just to continue to keep us and the public in the loop. And as we get closer to entering that first threshold, I'll be curious to know kind of what our communication efforts around the need for this is going to be. And I think our council will be on standby to help participate in distributing the need for conservation in the event that we do hit that threshold.
Sounds good, Mayor.
Absolutely.
As we remember, you are quite the water communicator.
Not my favorite thing to be doing, so I hope it doesn't come to it. But.
Agreed. We'll be glad to keep the council and public fully engaged there with all of our channels.
Great
opportunities.
Quick question though, is it a time to maybe begin communication about what conservation looks like, just GP, perhaps on the app, perhaps, the city channel. Perhaps Mayor Meek would like to do random interviews about conserving water and being a good steward of your sprinklers. I mean, I know it's hard because we are in dire straits right now, and it looks not pretty. But I would rather water my lawn less and keep our city, flush. Pardon the term. Than not. So maybe just preliminary communications is something. Yes, we want to know about this, and we'll do whatever we need to do to get that message out. But if there was a simple message that we can start sharing now about, just personal conservation, what that looks like.
Yeah, I think we can get a team together around the comms team and our sustainability team.
Because I think that brings them on in a different way.
We saw in the spring, or I guess February of 2021, our community does tend to react to that proactive communication. So let's put it out there and see if that might be a benefit.
I appreciate it as well. I think past city managers here in Waco and past councils have really prioritized our water supply, and I think our recent purchase of the Brazos River water rights also kind of is underscored by this moment. And as we kind of prepare for what looks like to be a pretty bad drought this year, I'd like us to continue our focus policy-wise on prioritizing our water supply. Not that that's in doubt in terms of our priorities, but much appreciated for continuing that as we go forward, because these types of events seem more and more likely with kind of global climate issues that have been in the forefront. So thanks.
Well said. All right. On public hearings, we do have 3 public hearings today. The first covers amendments to the Consolidated Annual Action Plans, and will be covered later on in the business session this evening. The remaining 2 public hearings will be covered here in just a few minutes by Clint Peters and their development-related items. Related to the resolutions, I have 2 of the 20 that I wanted to highlight this afternoon. The first is Resolution 204, and kind of doing this out of two respects. First and foremost, wanted to just say that our information technology team is just doing a real diligent job around cybersecurity, and want to acknowledge there's a couple of members from that team in the audience tonight and say thank you for the work they're doing, because it really matters. And the reason it matters is both financial and otherwise, and I'll talk through that here on Resolution 204. This is a renewal of our contract with American Insurance Group, AIG, which has carried the city's cyber insurance policy for the last 6 years. And the IT team, as well as other units of our organization, really did an extensive review of our options related to cybersecurity insurance over the last few months. And we're recommending to stay with AIG in continuing to provide our cyber insurance. And not much is changing in terms of the coverage limits and deductibles. Those are staying the same, but the most significant thing changing is the price of the policy. It's going up a very significant amount, 73% actually, making our annual premium $110,000. And that's really reflective of the amount of risk in the cybersecurity market around local governments. It's become increasingly challenging for companies to provide this insurance, and the prices in accordance have gone up. And that's in tandem to the sophistication and frequency of ransomware attacks and data breaches in all forms of government. In fact, I believe we may have highlighted this in the item, but multiple insurance carriers have frankly just left that market entirely and not providing policies any longer. So this is an item I wanted to bring attention to, because it's definitely one that our management team, led by our chief information officer, are communicating throughout the organization that we need to be diligent in protecting our cyber security. So Second resolution I wanted to highlight was Resolution 205, which is a little more happy resolution to highlight. Sorry for the downer there. It felt like I sucked the energy out of it. Jeez.
Well, Bradley, I got a comment too on
Go ahead.
again, it's a proactive, it shows a sign of proactivity in our organization that we're being thoughtful about cybersecurity when we really need it. And I think the stakes are high when it comes to what's at risk should we have to endure cyber attacks. So ensuring that we are being thoughtful about that, I think, is something that our citizens should value in the world that we're in right now. So I just, again, thank you to our staff, as you mentioned too.
Yeah, I think appreciate those comments. You know, when you think about all the systems that, whether it be water, 911, a loss of access to those critical infrastructure elements it would be quite noted by our residents. And so I appreciate you bringing that word of encouragement, Mayor. The Resolution 205 is a recommendation for approval on a project agreement between the Waco-McLennan County Economic Development Corporation and Aston Johnson Nonwovens Manufacturing. And this is an exciting one up in District 1, which would result in a new manufacturing and distribution facility on a 37-acre site in the Waco International Aviation Park. The company, if you go on their website and do a little digging, you can find out that they actually have roots in the paper business that stretch back to like 1790. I mean, this is a long-standing organization. They actually plan a $40 million investment in Waco that'll result in a 200,000 square foot facility, the addition of 36 full-time jobs by the end of 2023, all of those paying over $15 an hour with benefits, and the overall average wage of at least $47,360. This all made possible by the $2 million program project agreement that's on your agenda. That'll be made available to them in phases and benchmarks, and as almost always, the grant is being split half coming from McLennan County and half coming from the city of Waco, making our total cost in this project $1 million. I want to say a special thanks to the economic development team. I see Chris Collins out in the audience from the Greater Waco Chamber. Thanks, Chris, for another great project here, and welcome any comments from the council.
Just chime in here, and yeah, thanks, Chris and Kent. I know you guys have both worked on bringing this one in. I like it. All the reasons that Bradley just said, the $40 million for tax base, the 36 jobs that it's bringing, and it's a manufacturing company too. It's not, some of these groups are bringing in, they're all great, obviously, but some of them are distribution and storage, but this one's actually, we're building something, which I like. And I also like, it's a family-owned business that goes back to 1790, as you said. It was actually a felt company for a while, which is, you know, it's kind of odd. But yeah, paper fabric products, and it's cool that it's to me that it's in a different part of town than what we have been approving, deals that we've been approving. A lot of them are on, you know, out in the industrial district, but we're bringing some energy to this part of town too. So I'm excited about it, and particularly the jobs, and as Bradley said, doing a little bit of diligence on the company. If you look on their website, they really place a high value on sustainability, equality, and responsible production. So I'm excited that we're bringing these kind of businesses to Waco. So I'm Chris and Kent, thanks for all your work on getting this and getting this one into Waco.
I'm excited about this one as well. I was also doing my due diligence and looking into the company and reading about a plant that they have in another community that was able to successfully unionize and able to come to good negotiations that protect both the workers and create a profitable business environment, so that felt encouraging to me. Along similar lines, I got to meet with a bunch of union leaders from across the state and in our community last week, and we just talked about how, as we're making economic development decisions like this, can we make sure that we're both a pro-business council but also a pro-worker council that's ensuring that our residents have access to fringe benefits and to a livable wage, and this feels like an important move in that direction, and knowing that they are embodying that same spirit of working alongside their workforce in other communities feels like a hopeful note for me. So I'm excited about this.
The positioning of this manufacturing facility is intentional. I think that we have all been really excited about the growth and trajectory in our whole city, but we do realize that there are other places that large scale facilities can go, and believe it or not, there is still land available, and I think that the constant nagging that Chris may get from somebody in District 1, I don't know, is heard, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you and our economic development team for being diligent in that work and keeping in mind the community in that facility, in that area, that will continue to allow the growth that is necessary for our whole city, but especially those that touch the rural fringe. So we're, especially appreciative about that. I mean, I think that the amount of employment that will happen, but with the benchmarks that are there, so that we have a due diligence and responsibility to seeing that through, is beneficial in the way that we always structure deals. And so we're appreciative of that, and we're excited to see this legacy company come into a legacy community.
I'm excited about this as well, and I totally agree with my council member, Bearfield. Glad to see that it's coming to a different part of town so that our city will grow in different directions, not just in one. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the jobs that this brings to us and hopefully to the city of Waco and McLennan County. We can't tell everybody live in the city of Waco, but we can sure try. But anyway, I'm excited about this.
I think this is just another example of a business seeing that Waco is an exciting place for new opportunities, and that we have a culture that is committed to working to ensure that everyone in our city benefits from investment like this. And I'm very thankful to our economic development partners for their strategic work to bring this level of investment to our city, and are excited about another example of Waco moving in a positive direction, Waco's economy moving in a positive direction. So excited for this one.
Thanks, council members, for those comments. On ordinance today, we have 6 ordinances on the agenda. They are all on second readings. And if there's no further questions, that concludes my report.
Are there any items that council would like to remove from the consent agenda? Nope. If not, the consent agenda will consist of Resolution 2022-202 through 2021. The next item on the agenda is work session items 192 through 194. Bradley, would you please introduce the first work session?
Sure. We've got Clint Peters coming up for work session 192, discussion of planning public hearing agenda items. And for the public watching, if you're not familiar with Clint Peters, this is him, and he's our Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Bradley. Thank you, Mayor.
You can only get fan mail. I haven't gotten anything in a long time, so if you were the author of the fan mail, it's time to send another one in, right, Clint?
That's right. I've been missing those. Okay, so we got 2 public hearings today. The first one is dealing with the subdivision plats. We have 2 plats. The first one is the preliminary plat of the Hilltop Heights Edition. This is a new single-family subdivision along Loop 340 near Kendall Lane in our Timbercrest neighborhood. It's just north of the Buena Vista Park. And then you have the La Vega Junior High at Orchard and Loop 340. This is a proposed 46-lot subdivision that will have access points to Loop 340 and then back to the neighborhood on Hermosa Drive. Lots range in size from 6,000 square feet to 7,000 square feet. And they have met all the plating requirements, and Plan Commission recommended approval of this one. The second plat is the final plat and construction plans of the Thanksgiving Park Edition, Lot 1, Block 2. This is a 63-acre lot at the corner of I-35 and Route 340, in a development called Thanksgiving Park that currently includes University High School and an apartment complex. There's about 350 acres of undeveloped land left in that addition, and this lot takes up about 60 of those acres. And you can see it here. It's along Old Robinson Road, has access to Old Robinson Road, and will have an access point to Loop 340. There is a water line extension involved with this plat that will extend from I-35 over to the property. And they've met all the platting requirements and for the construction plans and the plat.
Clint, repeat what you said this is going to be?
So
That's by my house, that's why I'm asking.
It's proposed to be a multifamily apartment complex. It's zoned O2.
Okay, there is development going on there now, so this is going to be beside that? Or is this it that's already going up there?
It's probably the construction of the water line to get to this property. I don't think they've started construction of the apartments yet.
Clint, could it be that truck stop that's on the interstate side? Isn't that under
That could be
construction?
part of it. There's also a truck wash facility that's being constructed along the interstate. That's part of the Thanksgiving Park addition.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Plan Commission did recommend approval of this plat. It's met all the requirements. And then our last public hearing is a continuance from our last council meeting for a proposed voluntary annexation of 215 acres located along Bagby Avenue out near the Texas Central Industrial Park between Bagby and I-35 with proposed mixed zoning of M2, which is our industrial zoning, and O2. That we've gone through the public hearing process with Plan Commission and all required noticing requirements for annexation of the state. Council has already approved the annexation plan agreement for the site that provides services to that. And Plan Commission did recommend approval of the annexation and the zoning. And then here's the...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, this shows the portion that will be designated for M2 zoning, the industrial zoning, and then the O2 zoning, which is about a 24-acre tract there.
And this tract is separated by Flat Creek there, or one of the streams of Flat Creek, between Sendero and this piece of property that we're annexing. Is that correct?
That's correct. The southern portion of Flat Creek runs along the property line between this property and the Sendero Springs residential subdivision.
Will there be significant foliage like there is currently once this is developed?
Yeah, so there's a floodplain along there, and I would mention at your next council meeting there will be a proposed 380 economic development deal that will have some requirements in it about leaving those trees in that buffer zone that will go along with the development of the property. Okay. So you'll see at your next meeting.
Clint, I'm sorry, Josh, were you, what's coming up in there, is that going to disturb the neighborhood? You know, we've been real protective of this area before, if my memory serves me right, because of so many school children that live in that area. And so I'm just wondering what's going to be developed there. Is that...
So the idea is that it would be a mix of industrial and residential development that would provide jobs and housing for citizens of Waco, and that all the access will either be off of I-35 or Bagby. And the intent would be that the floodplain between this property and the Sendero Springs would be preserved with all the trees being protected in that area.
Okay,
as a buffer.
I just want to make sure that we're still being protective of this area as we have in the past. I didn't want to put something in there that would disturb the residential area and the folks that live there, because I know that we've been real protective of what goes on in there. So I just want to bring that to mind.
Sure. That's the goal of this development, that it would have the same zoning that you see and same protections that you see on other developments around that subdivision.
You say it's real comparable to what's happening on the north side of that creek adjacent to the neighborhood?
It is. So you have industrial on North Flat Creek, on the northern side, where you have a floodplain, and you can kind of see the industrial developments, industrial and office developments that have a buffer area where that floodplain is. So there's a natural protection of that subdivision because of those two floodplains that are on either side of it.
Yeah, and that's that's a good distance away from one of the first homes in that area. I know because I'm in that area almost every other day. My family lives there. And so I'm familiar with what goes on over there. But I just want to make sure that we keep the residents in mind when we allow a development to come in, and remind them, hey, you know, be mindful of the residents in that area. And I'm just reminding staff that we need to remind them of that, if you will. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And that's all we have.
Very good. Any other questions for staff on this?
Nope.
Great.
Waiting for. Now, our next work session is work session 193, which is a discussion of code compliance, including our personnel, scope of duties, and priorities update. This is a discussion that's going to be primarily led by Chris Randazzo, who, while perhaps unfamiliar to the council, has been serving dutifully in the code compliance team for quite a long time, and is, I think, going to be able to communicate in a way that you'll appreciate. And certainly also want to highlight him stepping up and serving as our interim code compliance manager. And Chris, very appreciative of you doing that. He's joined at the table, of course, by Renisha Hudnall, our interim director of community services. And Chris, this is, as you know, code compliance is such an important function in our community, and your team, I think last year, got to engage with more than 7,000 people around our community, and I just want to say thanks for the way that y'all are doing it, and look forward to hearing the council's feedback on how we can prioritize this important service that we provide our community. So take it away, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Bradley, thank you. We'll start the update today with our presentation overview, code compliance budget and personnel overview, top issues, changes we've made, things in progress, next steps, and questions. Our fiscal year budget is estimated at $1.2 million. We currently have 14 full-time employees, 10 code officers, 2 support staff, 1 supervisor, and 1 manager. The manager position is currently open. The code staff have a wide range of certifications, which include 7 Texas code officer licenses, 2 animal control certifications, and various international code council certifications such as mechanical, plumbing, residential, electrical, and zoning. We also have 3 bilingual team members that assist us with Spanish-speaking residents. According to census data, our city has experienced a population increase of 10.96% from 2010 to 2020. Our housing stock numbers are reported to be 52,562, with 47% being owner-occupied. Over 60% of our housing stock was built before 1978. With the previously allocated positions, we are now at 10 officers with the addition of the code manager position. We always seek voluntary compliance, and staff is diligent when it comes to educating our customers on defining what a true code violation is versus what a marginal issue is that does not meet the threshold to be considered an offense. However, even if it's not in violation, sometimes asking nicely gets it done. Code will begin working on a peer city review and a draft plan for a proposed multifamily inspection program for management to review. Code will also begin the background work and review process for a proposed draft graffiti ordinance, and will begin peer city review. There will be, and we have already seen, an increase in concerns overall due to the ease of use of the MyWaco app. Under the previous alignment, we had 2 code officers per council district. This had resulted in some geographic challenges based on the way districts are drawn. This was changed from 5 geographic areas to its current makeup, which is 8 geographic areas with more natural boundaries, having 5 code officers assigned in the core. Currently, we have code compliance supervisor, me, serving as the interim manager, code officer Kelsey Montgomery serving as the interim code compliance supervisor, 1 code officer assigned to preliminary work for a multifamily inspection program, and 1 area officer has taken on our preliminary graffiti abatement process. The current alignment is meeting department needs, but we remain fluid and can modify coverage as needed. We will continue to seek compliance via communication and education throughout the city. We will proceed forward with our research and peer city review toward a proposed graffiti abatement ordinance. Our preliminary graffiti abatement process can only go so far without resources and a graffiti ordinance in place. We continue to engage with our community on code issues and have expanded that dialogue to include programs such as housing referrals, lead-based paint removal, and programs such as solid waste cleanup events. Our partners in neighborhood engagement regularly update us on neighborhood meetings, and we are invested in attending those. The area code officer is able to serve as the first point of contact, but we're also diligent in advising that there is no wrong door when it comes to contacting us for code concerns or assistance to answer any range of questions. On issues outside of code compliance scope, we always stress to our customers that if we don't know who the appropriate contact is, we will find out. Code compliance continues to work closely with solid waste and McLennan County Sheriff's deputies assigned to work environmental crimes. This has proved to be one of our most valuable partnerships. And to borrow one of their stats, environmental crimes officers removed almost 900 illegally dumped tires last year. Code compliance has also begun to work difficult cases with Waco PD's neighborhood engagement team. On many occasions, bringing law enforcement into the equation is beneficial due to the additional resources they can provide. One such case we worked together was the abatement of a site in a wooded area that was a significant fire danger to the surrounding neighborhood. And I have a couple of photos on the next slide. The one on the left, and it's kind of hard to see, but in the tree line, there's 5 unsecured bottles of propane.
Jeez.
And one on the right is actually a burn pit that we think was being used as some type of kiln that they were melting glass. So we were able to research and get a hold of the owner and strike up a dialogue. And today, it is back to its original state. We've gotten everything out of there.
Wow.
We are currently discussing changes and updates to the code compliance section of the website overall so that it is more informative and helpful. Code compliance staff will respond to MyWaco concerns as they are worked, and we are working with staff to provide consistent, cohesive responses for those requests. We have created an informational flyer to share at neighborhood meetings. The front side of the flyer has a short Q&A that details what a notice is and what constitutes a violation. The reverse identifies common violations and where they may be located on the property. And I have an example of that on the following slide. The handout was created with both English and Spanish sections. Okay, this heat map represents total cases from January 2021 through March 2022. The table on the left provides a breakdown by council district of the caseload shown on the map. The yellow and red areas of the map represent greater concentrations of code cases, with yellow being the most dense. We feel that the recently realigned districts helped us with the increase from the 2021 numbers to 2020 to 2021 numbers. And just a little bit on our code case types that we have. Pardon me. We have an annual grass and weed violation notice. That is a notice that state law allows us to send once a year for vacant properties. And after that, we just mow it, and it's stuff that's repeat violation stuff that we just, instead of sending a notice every time and waiting an additional 10 days, we just don't mow it. Nuisance letters, which include high grass and weeds, accumulations of brush, accumulations of junk and litter, open storage, which would be appliances, furniture not for outdoor use, tires, auto parts, and similar items. Then we have junk vehicle cases, where we have a standard case and a forced abatement case where the vehicle is removed and disposed of. Building violation cases, which are 60-day residential, 60-day commercial, and our substandard residential and substandard commercial cases, which are BSC. For zoning, we cover front yard parking, home occupations, illegal signs, illegal occupancies, and pool fences. And of those cases, pardon me, these are the breakdowns by number. Code compliance issued 12,168 notices, with over 77% of these being nuisance related. 85% of all cases generated. Oh, thank you very much.
That's full service. That's all I mean. Yeah, I don't know better service. I can't live up to you though, your code compliance.
Pardon me, my throat got a little dry. Yeah, of those 12,168 cases, 77% of these were nuisance related. But 85% of all cases generated for that time frame were proactive on our part. And I'll touch briefly on the stat totals. There were 2,018 annual grass letter cases, 7,023 nuisance violation cases, 1,082 zoning violation cases, and 359 junk vehicles as the top ones. And for my Waco stats, Code continues to engage with the community via the My Waco app on Code Issues. Additionally, we are seeing an increase in traffic on the My Waco app with 474 code requests submitted so far, and that data is of March 28, 2022. 62% of those concerns are nuisance related. And for our mowing program, we do continue to strive to enhance our current mowing model for mowing and cleaning private and city-owned vacant properties. Currently, Code is maintaining 371 city-owned vacant excess properties. We previously were bidding out large areas of our city for the mowing program, which was causing delays due to the size of the jobs and the infeasibly low price points per lot. These two issues were causing quality issues for our properties. This season, we have broken these into smaller groups and will distribute them to our contractors in the same fashion as privately owned property. We're also breaking down the mowing and cleaning data internally to better report stats on this program. We will be working with GIS to post these stats on the dashboard. Code compliance staff continually works with owners to gain compliance before a property is brought before the Building Standards Commission. Typically, these cases begin as housing violation letters detailing all violations, and then will advance to a BSE case failing compliance. The board may issue an order that will require a property owner to repair or demolish a building and can apply civil penalties for delinquent compliance. We do see a need to get ahead of our aging multifamily housing situation. Now that this has been recommended to be adopted into the housing plan, staff will begin the necessary background work to review an inspection program in order to proactively address issues at multifamily properties across the board. Once we have compiled a database as it relates to our multifamily units for 8-plex and above sites. Next, we will begin a review of our peer cities for some baseline data. We will begin the groundwork towards a proposed new standalone ordinance that will be needed to begin this program. And as I stated earlier, we are working towards getting a proposed graffiti review ordinance. Staff will conduct the peer cities reviews for that and for additional baseline data for that program. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you guys so much. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart because I want us to have beautiful and safe neighborhoods, clean and safe neighborhoods. And I think that this plays one of the roles in ensuring that is accomplished, although it's certainly not the only way. And I know it's daunting and because some of our older housing stock. So I want to thank both of you, Chris and Renisha, for your work on this issue. The first thing was the budget. And my question is, from a budget perspective, what do you need to be able to accomplish more and have greater success with outcomes when it comes to enforcing code within our community?
Well, one of the things we touched on would be the multifamily. If we proceed to an ordinance, we will have to have staff to fund that and vehicles and things. It'll be almost a separate department from code. It'll be, strictly that, and code will, and that will allow those officers to focus more on the housing and in the community. It'll actually free up their time to do more in the community. So that would be our one big one. Graffiti, we're also looking at, there may be a slight increase needed there, but we're trying to do a lot of research there to bring you back some good data for that.
Great. As we enter into the budget cycle, that's something that I would like to continue to hear more about, is because I see that output and the work that's being done is significant, and is the number of cases you're working through is significant. And this is not a knock on staff, but when I look at the outcomes across the city and the blight, and I'm going to get to this in some more comment and questions, but it feels still like there's much work to be done with regard to this issue. And my hope is that you'll continue to bring those needs to us as we engage in discussions regarding this issue. The other thing I want to celebrate is the My Waco app. That is a really great step that our entire city staff, our technology department, the third floor of City Hall, and obviously those boots on the ground departments who are being responsive to the requests that get made through that very user-friendly app are able to use. So I do celebrate that big accomplishment for our city, and just want to thank everyone on our staff who is a part of that system, and just make a plug to the community to continue to use it. It's a great way, a great tool set to bring issues to light. The next question I had is, in my mind, what I'd like us to be able to do is have a high standard with regard to where people are required to take care of their property, but to the extent they can't afford to make, particularly residential units, afford to make those repairs, we have resources available to families in that situation. How is that kind of system working out from your perspective, and is that something that we can improve upon, both in terms, I guess specifically, if someone gets a code violation and they can't afford to make, it's a single family home, they can't afford to make those repairs, are we able to help them or direct them to someone who can?
Yeah, well, that is something we are working closely with housing on. We do bring the lead-based paint removal forms and housing forms to those folks. Some of them are tenant occupied, which is a whole different issue to address. But once we know that it is owner occupied, we do provide those forms. And I always believe we can do better. So we're diligent with staff and staff meetings to try to get these forms out to folks. Another issue is sometimes we take the forms and they're not filled out, so there may need some kind of outreach there. Maybe they need some more assistance, or they're afraid for some reason to fill the forms out and turn them in.
Well, I think that, that my goal for code is that we have a really high bar for ensuring that, and part of this bar is for the landlords, is that you are required to take care of your property and the owner occupants to be good neighbors, that you are taking care of your property, but if you have a financial need to make those repairs and that can be established, then we're going to be right there to direct you to either a nonprofit or have our own housing department to meet those needs. And so I think that is my goal for our organization. And to the extent that we're unable to deliver on that, I just want to be brought in again in the budget process on where and how we can do better.
I did want to add to what Chris was stating about we can do better as far as providing more information to our constituents. We are looking at doing a training for our code compliance officers in regards to our housing and lead abatement program. So they are fully resourced when they go out into the community to better explain the programs.
Awesome.
But as of right now, they're doing a good job. So this will be our second refresher for training.
That's good, because I know a lot of my constituents are scared to fill those forms out because they're scared the city is going to come and take their homes away. And it's hard to explain to someone, no, we don't want your home, we just want to help you fix it up. But a lot of people don't trust us. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, that might be part of your training, is to get the officers to go out and gain their confidence some kind of way, you know, instead of being so formal with them, you know, especially the older citizens that are really scared to lose their home. I know I've gone out and talked to some, but not to any avail that I can see, that they're still scared. Because I can say, no, we don't want your home, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to do it. I mean, that's the way they see it. But I don't know what we can do as officers in code enforcement to alleviate that feeling of some of these seniors.
Yeah, there's a really cool example, and I know Rainisha's not going to toot her own horn here. And she may not even remember you did this, but this was a big deal to me. And I highlighted in maybe some communication to the council a few months ago, where the code staff went to a community park and they met people where they were at and engaged them in conversation. So it wasn't in the midst of an enforcement visit. It was in the midst of, hey, these families are playing at the park. They might be able to get information about this rehabilitation program that, you know, to help rebuild their home. And I just thought that was a really unique way for us to meet people where they were, instead of in the moment where, hey, your siding's pulling off your house. That's a little different approach than, say, I'm hanging out at the playground and I see somebody that just wants to help me. Mm-hmm. So, Rainisha, I just want to affirm that, and maybe that's to Councilmember Rodriguez's approach of there's other ways to maybe look at this and getting the word out and gaining trust with our residents.
The next question I had, that's an amazing story. Thank you for that. The next question I had was, and when I look at that, kind of the outcomes or the desires for some of our neighborhood, and this really ties to kind of some of our housing goals too. And I know that code enforcement is kind of a base level, but it might be a role in this. You know, to get the outcomes I think that this council wants for our neighborhood, is it going to take a block by block approach? Is it going to take some intentionality, like kind of keep a level of intentionality throughout the entirety of the city with code enforcement, but then there's kind of a block by block strategy on kind of really some of these you know, areas where there's significant need for repair or redevelopment, and you know, or what is to really see outcomes with regard to housing that is in disrepair. Because having served in a core district, you see just, you know, block after block of just dire need. And code is a base level. So I guess my question is, do y'all have any thoughts around what it would take for us to kind of start taking bites at this elephant in a way that might be different than a lot of what we've done in the past, albeit good work?
That's a great idea. I'm certainly going to meet with Renisha, and we'll discuss how we can maybe make that work.
And to add to that, as you all are working together to figure out that way, that block by block method, making sure that our residents and constituents feel that you are working with them as opposed to doing something to them. Because I know that there has been some contentious relationships with code and with our residents and some issues. And it's not because, I know everybody on this panel has been called about, why can't I park on my own yard? And so it's something about understanding and how we present, the overall goal. I mean, code compliance is not something that would think is top of mind for everybody living their everyday life. But it's something that is necessary and needed if we're gonna, be and grow and be this beautiful city. I just wanted to add to that piece.
That's great.
I didn't know if you
I agree. I think that's and I just acknowledge the difficulty of this conversation because I've gotten that call, but I've also gotten the call probably more times than that is, why is my neighbor continuing to park his car on his yard? And so there is that difficulty that y'all get kind of both ends of anger. And so appreciate your commitment to that. And I think that there is an education piece to it, but I definitely agree that we're here to improve neighborhoods and improve quality of life and make sure that landlords and individuals themselves are taking care of their property. My last question is about the Building and Standards Commission, and just, I guess my question is, how, from your vantage point, is I'd heard some concerns over quorum issues. And I wanted to see, if I missed it in the presentation, was going to see if I might be able to get some data in regards to the action that gets taken in regards to the Building and Standards Commission, and kind of what the data bears out on how often staff is requesting action to be taken and the Building and Standards Commission doesn't take that action. That would be something I'd be really curious to see. And if as a part of that, and I know sometimes we ask for data that we think is going to be easy to compile, and it turns out it isn't. And so if this is difficult to compile, then let me know. But I'd also be curious if in some of the, anecdotally, what I feel like I've heard from staff at times is a family will come in with a code violation, Building Standards and Commission, or a landlord or a property owner or whoever will come in. Building and Standards Commission might punt it. The staff is like, here's some resources, we can help you, here's how we can help you. And the property owners never take advantage of those resources that staff has made available. And then we're not seeing any progress. And I want to be compassionate to the code violators, but I also want to be thoughtful for the neighbors who are having to endure sometimes significant code violations, that sometimes the code violations have public health concerns and odors and smells. And I want to, there is a balancing act here to ensuring that we are thoughtful and compassionate towards the people who might be violating code, but also it's not fair to the neighbors as well. And so from my vantage point, I really want to understand if there's a gap in getting us to outcomes and outcomes quickly for neighbors. I would like to know where those gaps are. And I don't know how hard that is to compile that. And if it's difficult, Bradley, just get with me later and we can talk about it. But I think it could be illustrative of maybe where things fall apart. And can you talk about the quorum issues have we had some quorum issues with Building Standards Commission?
Yes, sir. We had 2 months back to back where we missed quorum. There may have been some sickness involved. We weren't sure. Just those 2 months, we had the same people show up, and those cases get pushed back. So, when you miss one, it causes a domino effect with what you have planned. So, we have a very good board. It's just the quorum. If we can get the quorum going, we'll push the cases through a little faster.
Let's put that on our future agenda item for boards and commission to examine if there's any absentee issues and vacancies that we might need to try to fill in. And a discussion on if we need to increase the number of seats or or maybe I guess the issue would be decrease the number of seats so that we don't have to fill as many seats for quorum. Yeah.
We'll
have that discussion at a board and commission.
May I add a little bit to this? I know in the past, this is in the past, we used to get letters from our boards and commissions saying, your member at this board has missed so many meetings, you need to either talk to them or replace them. That used to happen to us, and I don't know whatever happened to that. And maybe that would help, you know, in some of the quorum meetings, I don't know, but that used to keep us on our toes as to, you know, our appointees attending meetings. I don't know if that helps or not, but.
Great feedback. That's all I have. I really appreciate everyone's efforts. I think this plan looks good. I think where I really want to see the outcomes in our community in terms of having neighborhoods that are just clean and safe. And I know the work is daunting, but I appreciate that. So thanks for letting me go first, guys. This is what I love.
Are you done? Remember, we'll come back to you
no.
at the end, obviously.
No.
Correct everything I said.
I'll have some more going.
First of all, great presentation, Chris and Rainish. I appreciate the effort you're putting into this, and I like the fact, I'll say, that Waco's code enforcement program is now kind of pivoting into a community support role. And I like what I was hearing about gaining the trust of the neighborhoods and what Councilmember Bearfield said about working with neighborhoods instead of getting the feeling of doing something to them. I think that's really critical. And it seems like we're doing that now. And I'm very encouraged by this report. And I think the example, the pictures that you put in there was a situation in a D5 neighborhood. And there were some, obviously you saw the pictures, significant code issues there. And I was very pleased with how the citizens there in that neighborhood and the code enforcement team worked together over a period of time and got that place looking great at the end and resolved a lot of issues there. So I want to express my appreciation to code enforcement and the whole group, which is just indicative and emblematic of how I think things are changing here. I like the presentation, how we were talking about data. To me, that drives everything. And you were showing what the major categories are, where they are, and I think that will help guide us to next steps on how we become a better code enforcement team. The issues about My Waco app were very encouraging. We were talking about that this morning, that it's only been out there for 3 or 4 months. I think it's gained a lot of traction in the community for this kind of thing, and I applaud you on how to match that app into your process of how to respond to these issues. I'm also excited about the multifamily inspection program you're talking about, which I think is greatly needed here. As we develop this data, I also want to get, maybe in the next time we talk about this, talk about process. How are these, who reports these? How are they reported? Is it a neighbor? Is it the person? Is it the owner? Is it the tenant? I'd be curious about what starts the ball rolling. And then again, the response time. How do we respond? How long does it take us to respond? How long does it take us to resolve? And that kind of timeline, I think, would help guide the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the code enforcement team. Because, and I think Mayor said it, that you know, the city is growing right now, and we have a high need. Code enforcement is a very important element that we need to address and stay on top of. So if we need to be facilitative of these code enforcement issues and the remediation thereof. And if we need to hire up to address this bubble that we have in the economy right now, I mean, hopefully we continue to grow, but if we need, as we look at next year's budget, particularly it looked like you had 14 and you had a couple of openings, and just keep in mind, if it makes us better and more responsive to the community, that if you have an ideal to hire an extra person or however, wherever that person would fit in based on the data, based on how we think that we could use this FTE to its maximum potential, I would be supportive of increasing staff there too. Can you talk, one question's left, really the response, the process and response time, I'd like to see some stuff on that next phase. But the other question I have is, I know that code enforcement, inspections, and permitting sometimes kind of roll together. Is there, and maybe you don't even need to answer this question, or just be thinking about, because it seems like parts of these processes have commonality. In the inspection process, where I'm particularly, in permitting also, where I think the city needs to move quickly, efficiently, to move citizens' issues through the cycle. So be thinking about how all those fit together too, and if that's not all code enforcement stuff and it's more fitting into building and not code enforcement, be thinking about that. But anyway, good presentation. And again, I like how we're pivoting into a very community support role and having the community call on us if they, in confidence, that we'll address these issues. And great job on that. I'm glad that was brought up today, because that was a good result. And I've heard that in a couple different cases, or many different cases. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Misha, thank you for your presentation. This feels like lots of presentations that we see where we see just a pretty significant disparity between the districts in the core of the city and the districts on the outskirts. Seeing that over 4,000 cases in 2021 were in District 4 feels right with my experience, and also that is just significantly high. Mayor Meek and I have lots of conversations about code enforcement, and it wasn't something that I really saw the full impact of until being in this seat. And code enforcement, I would say, is one of the #1 issues I hear from all of my neighborhood association leaders and neighbors. There is a high level of frustration with just the state of our various neighborhoods and what that does for a sense of placemaking and morale and pride in our communities, while recognizing all of the different tensions of affordability and accessibility and the interpersonal dynamics. I think we're all saying we're interested in seeing your budget reflections. I would love to see this team doubled. I mean, I think the need is so significant. Ranisha's laughing. I think the need is so significant, at least where I sit in District 4. I feel like my part-time job is using the My Waco app and walking the neighborhood and saying, this fence is coming down and it's a hazard. Here's illegal dumping in the alley. Here is bulky waste on the side of the road, and it makes it dangerous to drive down various streets, let alone if you are kids playing in the street, they could not be seen because there's a large pile up mattresses or dressers. I was thinking about this the other day. I started a calligraphy business in Waco in 2017, and the reason that I got into it was I noticed there was so much spare wood on the side of the road that instead of having to go buy wood at Home Depot, I would just go drive around my district and I would find pieces of wood, and then I could reclaim them and like do beautiful calligraphy on them. I was like, wow, what a full circle moment that I'm now sitting on council and saying like, yeah, it was easy to find wood because it's all over the place. So when you give us your budgetary requests, I would just encourage you to be pretty aggressive. And in a dream world, what do you need? Do you need 5 more people working in the core of the city? It's really, we deeply care about the quality of life and the safety, and this feels like this is intersecting in both of those issues. I love this document. I think this is beautiful. Really appreciate how thorough it is. I feel like I'm learning something in reading it. I love that it's bilingual. I'm curious how this information is getting out into the world.
We were taking them to every event we go to, neighborhood associations. We're handing to the inspectors and making sure they have them. So right now it's just when we show up somewhere, we're passing them out.
I'm curious if, and I imagine this is probably a significant lift, but when someone opens a new water bill account with us, if this could get sent out to them, because I think especially that are folks that aren't from Waco don't know that the sidewalk in front of their house is their responsibility, or they don't know that the alley is theirs to clean. And so if this could be part of the like, welcome to living in this new property, here's some 101. The other piece with this is, since so many of these cases are nuisance cases, I wonder if we can do some preemptive work with our phenomenal comms department on some public service announcements. Things like you're allowed to have X number of bulky drop-offs at Cobb's a year. I love that recently on Twitter they had you can put a pile of brush out that's 4 by 4 by 4. that was brand new information to me that I think is helpful. I wonder if folks knew the legitimate pathways that we're offering for them to get rid of things, if that might help defer people from less legitimate ways that then use a lot of staff time to connect across departments to address. But
I think it will, but we've even actually included some of the solid waste regulations on our letters, because a lot of people are putting things out that are bulky, but not realizing they need to call it in. So we're including that when we have to send a letter, so at least they'll have that information.
that feels like that seems like a significant area of disconnect, particularly in District 4, that folks are putting pieces out, and it's like, we have avenues for folks. How do we get that information out so they know it quickly, and also we don't have massive things sitting on the side of the road for several days? But I imagine that sounded pretty negative. I'm very grateful for the work y'all are doing. Having the My Waco app is really helpful. I've talked to several constituents that feel really empowered knowing that they can see something immediately and report it, and be able to have that back and forth with y'all. So thank you for the work on top of addressing the app on top of already having full-time jobs in the city.
Okay, so thank you for your presentation. Appreciate that, Chris and Renisha. This is an incredibly awesome document, and I agree with Councilmember Palmer that, you know, that was a brilliant idea for new residents, and so I guess that would be multifamily units as well, how to engage and receive this. I mean, you know, slide it into, but that's a cost with that, but we'll figure that out. Like, you know, the Waco magazines and things, just about anywhere that it could be made available. The other thing is what kind of education pieces exist for your commercial residents? Because I know that, you know, in my district, there are a lot of emerging entrepreneurs and business owners who, you know, have had interesting issues with code, and I think it's been due to perhaps lack of education of your process, of our process. So, you know, it's something as simple as this, you know, could be created for our commercial or entrepreneurial residents. Then that's something that could be shared, you know, with the chambers, with Startup Waco, with all of those entities, and so that way we are continuing to educate our customer, and in a manner that is, again, with and not to. I think that everybody coming along is how we're going to get through this and how we're going to get to see it, because, you know, our business entities are still a part of the neighborhood, and so we've got to make sure that we're all speaking the same language, metaphorically, and to get to the end goal, which is just a place made that is for you. I think that when we go to our neighborhood association meetings, we oftentimes, and what I've seen, you know, is we present to the neighborhood. I think maybe you want to consider one time where you are answering and not just presenting. You know, this is, you know, Code 101. You know, I'm here just to answer any questions you have regarding, you know, because we put out this new thing that said this is what is your issues and what is frowned upon by code compliance, no longer code enforcement, because again, with, not to. And so you would have an opportunity to answer those questions, and so then everybody feels brought along, you know, in this process and in this newness. So, but I think that these steps are wonderful steps, and, you know, how we, you know, I echo my council members about as we are approaching budget season, you know, within reason, so our city manager doesn't totally freak out. You know, you have to say what you need. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because, you know, we know 8 people can't cover 100 square miles effectively. So, you know, what does that look like in reality? You know, what does, you know, but, you know, however, with the creation of the app, that changes some things, because you've got some eagle-eye folks, you know, who are doing some of the work for you. So, you know, you may not need that, but you may have to have a different type of response team. So those are the things that we need to know regarding moving forward in the budget season. But give some thought to our commercial folk Because I know that, especially small businesses, I mean, if my job is to make widgets, I don't, I'm not thinking about what my container has to look, my widget maker has to look like and what the things are. So I may not know that. So something like this for our entrepreneurs and small business owners would be, I think, helpful.
Right, I appreciate that, and Kelsey and I were looking for a next project, so that might be it.
But thank you.
Right, I did have a couple more things. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
3-minute timer.
I have, yeah, is.
Timer on.
Go into the, my question is y'all have a latitude to, I'm sure there's some gray, some discretion in terms of, is this a violation or not? And I guess my question is, in that, when part of me wants to just say, like, can we bring people in more? And if we have this kind of user-friendly response to it, my idea would be to err on the side of go ahead and let's put a notice there if there is in the gray, to really try to bring people into the process, knowing that there's resources available and knowing that, the conversation can lead to a productive outcome. And then I think, another question I had is, how do we contact, and if this has been said and I missed it, I'm sorry, contacting owners versus tenants, do y'all leave a notice on the door, or do y'all look up on the tax rolls to see and send a notice to the owner?
Yeah, we look on the appraisal district for owners, and then we have access to the city water file so we can find out who's the tenant. Right. If it's a different name, then we know we've got the tenant or the person paying the water bill.
So both people get a notice at the same time, or? Yes. Okay, great, got it, awesome. And then again, I guess just, this is more of a statement, but I just think that this ties so closely to the housing study we just did that shows that our greatest need is not the quantity of housing stock, but the quantity of quality housing stock. And I know that code enforcement is only one tool to solve that problem, but it's an important one. And again, just thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, just one comment. Obviously, thank you for this report, but something that's been going through my mind because I walk out a lot in my district. There's some folks who know they're out of compliance, but don't have the way to, or financial way to fix the compliance. And there might be a elderly person, male or female, living in a house that has no way of getting this particular item either off their yard or somewhere where it can be done away with because of code compliance. So how can we help them be able to get back into compliance? And I know we can't be everything for everybody, but I'm talking about certain circumstances and certain instances. I don't know if this should be part of a discussion that we need to have, but I know there's a big need in my district for that. I don't know. I imagine in District 1 as well, but it's just something to bring forward into the discussion, if we can. That way, when we do talk to our residents, we can say, well, we can get this organization out here to help you to remove or to help you clean this particular area up, or move this particular, might be a refrigerator or mattress or something out of the way.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We're going to take like an hour and a half break.
I think we're gonna have to cancel this next session.
Don't do it.
We don't have time for this one.
Good poor fellow.
I'll make a joke about this earlier today because I felt so bad.
I'm going to go clogging. I would encourage y'all to go with me.
He said, I'm coming down to the front, whatever.
No, we have the long-awaited work session 194, which is a discussion of the Heart of Texas MHMR Behavioral Health Network Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Program. And Sean Lee, if you're not familiar with Sean, one just here at the table, he's the Director of Adult Mental Housing. He's been super patient and graceful in our delays. And so Sean, thank you seriously for, just being patient with us and delivering this message today. We look forward to hearing about the various programs that your team administers that serve our homeless residents, as well as the partnerships that you have with the City of Waco on the tenant-based rental assistance program. This certainly is well-timed, I feel like, Sean's presentation based on the draft homelessness strategy, as well as all the focus and energy surrounding housing in our community. So, Sean, welcome.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're the Heart of Texas Behavioral Health Network now. My presentation has been delayed so much we've had a name change.
Name change. I wasn't going to say anything,
but yeah, I really just want to come here today to talk about what it's like to be one of the different service providers that does a lot of work for homelessness in our community. The overlap between mental illness and housing scarcity is pretty stark, so I'm just going to give you guys a picture of what it's like the day-to-day working with some of the programs that serve our consumers at the Behavioral Health Network, including the TBRA program, which is funded by you guys. Just to give you guys a little bit of background, there's a lot of acronyms. I hope you have this printed out. I'll try not to speak with the acronyms, but this is just a sheet of them in case I slip into that. These are the various programs that we offer, and we'll quickly go through each one of them. And if you have questions at the end, I'd be glad to take them. So a little bit about the Behavioral Health Network. We're operating as the local mental health authority for the 6-county region, including McLennan County. We're the provider of last resort for individuals experiencing mental illness, for individuals who need a case management service or an IDD service for intellectual and developmental delay case manager, regardless of their payer source. Our leadership has always encouraged us to seek out funding for homelessness and housing scarcity for our clients because oftentimes that goes hand in hand with our people. This just quickly goes through the history of how we've started. In 2004, we started our PATH program. And then since 2006 and on, we've increased or sought out additional funding. The vast majority of our funding comes through HUD, though we do get funding from you all for our TBRA program. And then we also have some privately funded programs through a grant with the Cooper Foundation and the Homeless Coalition. We'll go through all of those as we go through this presentation. So I always like to start with PATH when I talk about the services that the Behavioral Health Network provides for homeless individuals in our community. The PATH program, or the Project for the Assistance from Transition from Homelessness, are 2 case managers, a supervisor, and a rehabilitation specialist. And the role of this program is to seek out individuals who might be averse to mental health treatment or are just having a difficult time accessing community resources. So these case managers, they're going under the bridges, they're going into encampments, they're along the railroad tracks, they do outreach at all of the shelters, as well as the hangar, which is one of our day centers here. And what they're doing is they're doing the difficult work of engaging mentally ill individuals into seeking treatment from MHMR. If they're not mentally ill, they can still get them connected to other community resources, but oftentimes they're, especially with some of our chronically homeless individuals, it's difficult for people to engage in our services. There's apprehension, there's paranoia, there's maybe some negative instances that they've had or experiences that they've had with previous mental health providers. And so oftentimes this is a long process. Some of the PATH clients we've been working with have been well known to our team for many years, and we outreach to them as often as we can, keep on encouraging them. Sometimes it's not the day that they're ready to engage with us or want to work with us, and then someday it might be that day. And what's really nice about the PATH program is that they're very flexible. They serve about 250 individuals annually. Because of their flexibility, they're able to do a lot of things that normal case managers might not be able to, like take them immediately to go get their ID, take them immediately to a shelter, work with them on their Social Security application right then and there while they have them. So I consider PATH kind of the foundation of the services that we offer for homelessness at the Behavioral Health Network, with the eventual goal of hopefully getting them into services where they can receive ongoing services from our case management team. Permanent supported housing is a big program that we have here at the Behavioral Health Network. Right now we have 45 individuals in that program, and this is meant to serve our most vulnerable and chronically homeless individuals. Individuals in this program are required to have a disability and be homeless. And when we say homeless, HUD defines homeless as being on the streets, being in an emergency shelter, fleeing domestic violence, or living in a place that is not fit for human habitation. A big component of this one, beyond just the rental assistance, is very intensive case management services. This is where it really blends well nicely with the services that are offered at the Behavioral Health Network with our case management services that are provided. So we can provide the funding that does the rental assistance. Our case management team is able to provide those supported services that are required and really needed for our individuals to be able to have a successful transition out of homelessness into permanent supported housing. Because many of these individuals are disabled, we have a longer stay with a lot of these programs, or with a lot of the individuals in this program. Their disability is going to keep them essentially in a low income bracket for a really long time, and so they're going to be in this program for a long time. So even though we've had this program for many years, there's not a lot of turnover with this program. So when we get a slot available for this program, it's very valuable, and we work really hard to make sure that that spot goes to a very needy and vulnerable person in our community. Rapid rehousing is again for homeless individuals, but a disability is not required. This program is really meant to meet an individual where they're at and provide as little rental assistance and support as needed to take them out of their homeless situation and into a situation where they're able to sustain their housing without continued assistance from us. So a good example for this program might be an individual who was hospitalized, lost their employment, suddenly found themselves homeless. Unfortunately, it's very easy to become homeless. Oftentimes, it's just a family dispute or a couple of missed paychecks or an incarceration, and suddenly you find yourself homeless. These are individuals who are considered less vulnerable but still homeless, and the typical amount of assistance we provide is about 6 months. Some people are good with only a deposit assistance and maybe first couple months rent. Some people might need a little bit more. We've helped people longer than a year in this program just because it might not have worked out for them as easily as we had anticipated. But this one is a good example of a kind of a low cost, high impact one. We get just a little under $90,000 every year from HUD, and we serve about 20 people each year in that program. Tenant-based rental assistance is the program that you all fund. This one does not require homelessness. It's meant for individuals who are just experiencing any type of housing scarcity. We measure, before a person goes into a program, the number of emergency room visits for mental health concerns in the year prior to their enrollment in the program, and the year of their enrollment in the program. There's a very sharp reduction in those emergency room visits. People are also able to get connected with primary care physicians. Those are two of the measures that we keep for you all in alignment with the goals from Prosper Waco. Assistance with this one is limited to 24 months, and most individuals or most families in this one do get the full 24 months of assistance. This is meant to serve a population of individuals that might have found themselves behind in rent, or their rent may have increased to a point where they're not able to afford it anymore, or they've taken on extra costs. So they might not necessarily be homeless, but they are experiencing some housing scarcity. And this allows us to provide that rental assistance. As with all the other programs that we offer, this also has a case management component that's really valuable, that marries really well with the case management services that are provided at Behavioral Health Network. Our Supported Housing Resource Program, or SHR, is funded through our Health and Human Services grant. It's part of the large pot of money that the Heart of Texas Behavioral Health Network gets from the HHSC grant that we receive from them. It's $97,000 every year, and this one is another very flexible program. It can provide up to 12 months of complete rental assistance, or it can be as little as paying arrears, helping an individual catch up on their utilities, paying the first month's rent and deposit for an individual. One of the caveats of this program is that a certain percentage of these people who are entering this program have to discharge from a state mental health facility. But we're able to serve a lot of people in this program. I really like this program a lot because of its flexibility and all the things that we can do with it. Our Landlord Liaison project or program is a collaboration between Heart of Texas Behavioral Health Network, Cooper Foundation, and Prosper Waco. What we had encountered with some of the programs that we offered was that landlords were often on the fence about whether or not they wanted to rent to one of our individuals. Oftentimes, an individual who's seeking rental assistance might have broken leases or a criminal background that might make a landlord wary of renting to that individual. So what this does is this provides landlords with an incentive to rent to these individuals who have these eviction histories or criminal backgrounds. And what it does is if there's a negative outcome to a lease, say they leave early or there's damages that are in excess of what the deposit is, we'll straight up reimburse the landlord for those missed costs. And so it's not upfront assistance that we're giving to a landlord, but it's providing kind of an insurance for those. And we found that only about a quarter of the individuals that are enrolled in the program have requested reimbursement. So over 40 individuals who would not have been served or not have been able to be rented to otherwise are now able to have a place on their own just with the feeling that we've got their back in case something bad happens to this client. And then we have our Flash program. That's flexible assistance to secure housing. This is privately funded by the Homeless Coalition through a generous donation from one of our members. And what this does is it provides funding for a lot of the really unique challenges that come along with being very low income, homeless, or just an individual seeking assistance, and things that don't typically come up in things that get covered by grants. One of the biggest barriers that we have are a lack of birth certificates and IDs. Without a birth certificate or ID, you cannot apply for an apartment. Landlords just will not accept your application. And sometimes that's what is causing a person to stay in homelessness. They don't have the resources to be able to get a birth certificate or ID. They don't know how to navigate the system. This works really well with our PATH program, who's very adept at being able to get birth certificates and IDs for individuals. This covers the cost. Sometimes the cost of a birth certificate is surprisingly expensive. It can be upwards of $100 to get your birth certificate, and oftentimes that's the first step in getting additional identification like your social security card or a Texas ID. So that lowers that barrier. It also provides funding for bus passes. We also purchase beds out of this fund. It's difficult to move into a place out of homelessness, and you're moving into a wonderful apartment, but you have no place to sit on or sleep on. So it's very nice for us to be able to provide at least a bed. Landlords now are increasingly requiring renters insurance for people to live in their complexes. If you have no income and you're receiving assistance through one of our programs, this is a barrier. It might seem like a small barrier, but it's usually the premium is $120 a year. If you have no income and major part BHN is paying the entirety of your rent, this is a barrier, and the Flash program has really stepped up to fill that gap. Oftentimes, your apartment complex does not provide you with a key to your mailbox. You have to go to the post office to get that. That's $40. Again, these are very small things that might not kind of percolate up to like a need for us, but if you have no income, you're coming off the streets, these are big barriers to be able to have against you for having success.
With the Flash program, in terms of, I know that work of helping to get birth certificates and IDs is important. Have you seen an uptick in folks needing that assistance with those real ID requirements that have come down from the federal government?
Oh, that's a good question. We've always had a lack of identification and homelessness going in hand. I don't know if there's been an increase, but it's as long as I've been working here, lack of identification has been an issue. So.
Thank you.
Lyons, I saw that the city of San Antonio is rolling out a new program for city library cards to count as an ID to use in other forms. Do you know if there are other communities that MHMR works in that you've advocated for similar policies in order to increase that accessibility to an ID?
No, I haven't heard that. We get really creative with ID requirements. There's our homeless management inventory system can count as a step towards an identification, or even just a case note from a service that you received with the Behavioral Health Network can count as secondary identification, but I haven't heard of that, but I think that's a great idea.
Okay, cool, thanks.
And then kind of tying them all together is our Housing Navigator program. I'm really proud of our Housing Navigator program. Before we had Housing Navigators, if an individual received any of the assistance from not only my programs, but from Section 8 or Family Abuse Center or Salvation Army, they were told, okay, you have this assistance, now go out and find a unit to stay in, and hopefully the landlord wants to work with us. Well, that's difficult for a lot of our clients because landlords can't keep all of the different funding streams kind of straight in their mind. There's a difference between Section 8 and permanent supportive housing and TDRA and rapid rehousing. The landlord wants to know, how am I getting paid? Who's going to be providing this assistance? Where are the checks coming from? And what the Housing Navigator program is two case managers who know all the different funding resources in our community. They don't just serve hard Texas Behavioral Health Network consumers. They serve anybody in our continuum of care or in our Waco community who's seeking assistance. And they do a really good job of connecting people and helping them following them from the moment that they're approved for a program through their lease signing, and helping them overcome a lot of the barriers for individuals who seek housing. A big barrier is application fees. Application fees range anywhere from $20 to $60. Again, it might not seem like a big barrier, but if you are a large family or you're hesitant to apply at a place because you don't want your $60 just to be thrown away. You know, this takes away that fear for the client to be able to do things. Utility deposits accompany almost every single person that we work with. Those range anywhere from $100 to $300. Those can also be a barrier. So these are nice little things that the Housing Navigator program can help cover. And it's pretty inexpensive, $175,000 annually, pays for all of that, pays for 2 case managers, and pays for all the application fees and utility deposits and moving groceries for all of these consumers that we serve. Last year we served 149 individuals, so a very big success. They've become well integrated in our community. They're known to all the landlords. They do a lot of landlord engagement. They go around to different apartment complexes. They just even drive around looking for signs for landlords to engage with, and it's been a really big success in our community. And then this complicated chart is kind of a brief overview of what our coordinated entry system looks like. Before we had coordinated entry, if you were having any type of housing scarcity or housing crisis, you would have to call the different organizations to see what funding was available and if you qualified. And oftentimes, funding would run out very quickly for these programs, or you wouldn't know which program you qualified for, or you wouldn't even know if there was a program out there that you might have qualified for. And so instead of people calling all the different organizations, they can just call one number, and they can be assessed, and then they can be referred to all the different programs that they might qualify for. And this assessment really does a good job of determining that person's vulnerability. So it's a 10-minute basically interview that just talks with them about what created their homeless situation or housing scarcity situation, and measures other things about their vulnerability, and allows us to be able to prioritize certain individuals for our programs. So a person with very high vulnerability would be referred to a rapid rehousing or permanent supported housing program. A person with moderate would be referred to our TBRA program, or our SHR program. We have some other programs here that we partner with the Housing Authority with emergency housing vouchers. HUD, VASH also works with the Housing Navigator program and our coordinated entry program. And then they can even just be referred to the housing navigators if they make decent income, they're just having a difficult time locating a place, they need to be out of their place really quick. Let's say their landlord has decided to not renew their lease, but they need to be out within 30 days. A referral to a housing navigator can help them find a place quickly with all of that. And I believe that is my last slide. If there's any questions from you all?
Thank you for, one, your patience and your presentation. So we know about these programs, and we know about Behavioral Health Network and all of the things that are the many layers that go to that, from the low to high risk. How does the general public know about it? Because as you mentioned, a housing crisis can happen within 24 hours, and that may not be a life that you ever had any knowledge of. So how would one go about knowing that, or how are you all sharing that information to Gen Pop, to just, and not necessarily yes, those in crisis, but how does one know if I wasn't in crisis, but then how would I even know where to turn to?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have many flyers that we try to put out at the various locations where a person might be experiencing some housing scarcity, where there might be some overlap. So obviously all of the shelters, but a lot of the community clinics, places like Caritas, so if an individual is seeking food assistance, it's often, they're probably going to also have some housing scarcity. It's been something that the Homeless Coalition definitely needs to work on, as far as making sure that our coordinated entry system is well advertised to the community. But we do our best trying to do things. We have a community booth at the farmers market that we are at every couple of months. So there's little things that we can do, but oftentimes it's, we are catching a person and then, they've called around, and then we tell them, please call Heart to Home or our coordinated entry system, and we'll try to take care of you from there.
Okay, thank you.
Just grateful for all the good work you do.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Also thankful for the work. Daniel, thanks for being here today too. Sean, thanks for the presentation. I'm so appreciative of these incredible needed services for our most vulnerable populations. Josh, you're still on the board? So thankful to our Mayor Pro Tem for serving faithfully on this board as well.
Mayor?
Can I ask one
Oh,
question?
right, go ahead.
If a person is in crisis, and generally, some folks don't want everybody to know they're in crisis or their own family to know, can they walk into your facility at MHMR and just say, hey, I'm in trouble, can you help me?
They could, they would probably be told to, I mean, we would help them call at that point. We would have one of our front desk staff do that, but we also have, you don't have
So
to
they
just-
can't walk in and get help then?
You can, but we have, you would be told to call the number to be placed on that priority list, but we also have access points for our coordinated entry at both of the emergency shelters. So at the Salvation Army or My Brother's Keeper, you can walk in and be assessed right then and there.
No, I'm talking about someone who doesn't know to go to the Salvation Army or wouldn't go to the Salvation Army,
Right.
but they would be walking down Austin Avenue or Franklin and see your sign and say, I need help.
Yes.
Can you help me?
Yeah, and all of our front desk staff at Heart, Sex, and Behavioral Health Network know the number, and we would assist them in being able to contact them.
Okay, thank you.
Is there an opportunity for radio or social media presentation for Behavioral Health Network and the things that you all do?
Yeah, we have a new position with just that exactly in mind, and we have a person who runs all of those things, so we could do that.
In multiple languages, yes?
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you.
The last question I had is, I know that many of the services that you provide are for people in crisis, and there's a lot of complexity around those that you're serving, and a lot of the people that you're serving have need where this might not apply. But one of the things we're seeing in Waco right now are increased wages, and one of the weights that I carry is it seems like there's sometimes a Grand Canyon between people that are in financial insecurity and the wages that we're seeing increase in the community. I know that I was just texting to verify Chick-fil-A's starting wage now is $17 an hour to be an entry-level worker at a fast food restaurant. And so we're seeing the wages increase, and obviously costs are going up too, but if you're working at $17 an hour, then that's something. But then we have the complexities of financial, and I know that, so I guess my question is, do you feel resourced to help bridge that gap? And are you working with some of our economic development partners to connect those populations who maybe aren't in the depths of the most complex crises with behavioral health, to be able to get connected to those jobs in this community? And I think that's the complexity of connecting people to people in financial insecurity to those jobs is more challenging than I wish it was, and probably not going to be something we're going to solve today. But I had a question of do you feel resourced for that? But then also, can we keep talking about that? Is probably my other question too.
We do. We have a dedicated case manager with our behavioral health unit, and it's his entire job is to connect individuals who are able to be employed to those gainful employment options. And he's got a full-time caseload, and anybody can refer their client to him for that role. So I know that he stays busy with those referrals. As you know, a lot of our clients are kind of locked into that lower income bracket on that other side of the canyon just by means of their disability. So they're forever going to be that. But for individuals who are able to work and are seeking employment and in services of the Behavioral Health Network, there's a dedicated case manager that helps bridge that gap. But I'm certain there's ways that we can continue to talk about how we can expand that.
That's something that I'd be hopeful to do, because I think that's something that I think we all celebrate the jobs paying good wages coming to our community, but ensuring that we're being proactive and strategic in connecting vulnerable populations who are in fact able to work to those jobs is something that is of high priority to us. So as you have vision, or your organization has vision for that, please continue to allow us to be a conduit to help with that to the extent that's practical.
Definitely.
Awesome. Sean, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So meaningful for you to be here.
All right, thank you very much.
And I think that was our last work session, is that right?
That's correct.
Are there any requests for future agenda items?
In light of that conversation, I'd love for us, maybe this can be a work session or an informal report looking at enhanced library cards. I just did a quick search and I saw that San Antonio has an enhanced library card. The city of Dallas just passed it last week. A smaller peer city, San Marcos, has this. I can just imagine so many different segments of our population benefiting from increased access to IDs, from families escaping domestic violence to immigrant populations to folks experiencing homelessness, and finding ways that we can maximize the assets that we have to create accessibility.
Any other requests for future agenda items?
Nope.
If not, we will now recess the work session and reconvene regular session for executive session as read into the record by our interim city secretary at 4:46 p.m.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council will go into executive session in accordance with the following provisions. Number one, real property under the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072. Economic development under the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.087. And number three, personnel under the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.074. City Attorney Jennifer Ritchie. We're now going into executive session.